Please welcome to the stage Yoshi P and Fox Club.
We're back.
さあ何時間この格好をしてるんだろうかな。
I wonder how long am I going to be in this outfit?
A lot. ね、長いですね。すっかり長いです。
いや気に入ってるんです。
But I like it.
That's good at least. それでは、早速始めていきたいと思いますので、皆さんにご挨拶をお願いしたいと思います。So let's start with 吉田さん's greeting to everyone.
ファイナルファンタジー14プロデューサー兼ディレクターの吉田です。よろしくお願いします。
I'm Naoki Yoshida, producer and director of Final Fantasy XIV.
And my name is Toshio Murochi again, also known as the Fox Clan. I will do the MC role for this program. コミュニティチームモルこと室内です。よろしくお願いします。じゃあ
そして、
はい、
もう一方スペシャルなゲストをお呼びして、このステージ進行していこうかなと思います。
So now I'd like to bring forward to the stage a very special guest for this program.
Yes, please.
ファイナルファンタジーシリーズの生みの親である
The founding creator of the Final Fantasy series,
広信坂口。じゃあ皆さんに一言ご挨拶をお願いします。
So could I ask a little message for our audience?
今日は、暴れてやるっていうことでこちらに来たので、これから1時間ほどですか暴れていこうと思います。
So I am here to give it my all and kind of get a little rowdy. So for the next hour or so, I'm going to get as rowdy as I can.
やばいな、今日止める人がいないんだよ。
Oh, that sounds like trouble. There's no one there to stop you.
では坂口さん、席の方によろしくお願いします。
So please take a seat.
Alright, so to begin with, let me introduce Sakaguchi-san's profile again. So please move to the next slide. 坂口さんのプロフィールのご紹介からさせていただきたいと思います。ミストウォーカーコーポレーション代表であらせられますが、He is for sure the Mr. Walker Corporation CEO and then known as the founder of the Final Fantasy series でファイナルファンタジーの生みの親ではありますが、今日はどちらかというと光の戦士としての坂口さんのお話を伺いたいと思いますのでよろしくお願いします。So rather than that, for today's program, we want to introduce 坂口さん as a warrior of light. よろしくお願いいたします。
よろしくお願いします。
Thank you.
So for the first half of this program, we will have a talk session between Sakaguchi-san and Yoshida-san, based on the prepared themes. この最初の時間帯は、まずは用意しておりますテーマに沿ったトークセッションを坂口さんと吉田さんに行っていただきまして、で後半戦は、フォーラムで事前に皆様から多数の質問を、預かっておりますので、そちらの方を聞いていきたいと思います。And for the latter half, we gathered so many questions from you through the official forums and the community, and then we will ask you a question to the 坂口さんand 吉田さん。Right? So let's start the talk session, and the first theme is this one. Please move to the next slide.
これはもうあれですね。始めたきっかけか。これあれですね。初めて空を自力で飛んだ時の未だにもうこの感動は忘れられないという瞬間ですね。
Oh, yeah. Stepping into Final Fantasy XIV. So this screenshot is when I was able to gain the ability to fly with my mount. I still remember just how moved I was when I was able to do that.
いやもうそう言っていただけるとめちゃくちゃ嬉しいですよ。
反動ですよね、なんかね。それまで
Wow, when you put it that way, it makes me so happy.
Yeah, I was so moved.
始めたきっかけは吉田さんと対談があるっていうことで、まあもともと MMO は好きでハマるなと思ってたのでちょっと手を出さなかったんですけども、まあやっぱり14やられてるってことで、これはハマらないようにちょっとだけプレイしてお会いしようと思ったのがきっかけですね。
So the reason why I started Final Fantasy XIV was because I was scheduled to have this sort of talk session with Mr. Yoshida, and so of course I always loved MMOs, so I thought, well, if I start playing it, I will probably be very much obsessed by it, so I tried not to get my hands on the game just much, but oh my gosh, 14 got me. But I tried my best to just touch on the surface so that I won't go too deep.
もう始めたらもう、そこから毎日最初の頃は12時間ぐらいプレイしてました、はい、
But once I did start, I believe every day I was on there for like 12 hours.
オープニングでは今は 30% とおっしゃってましたが、最初はじゃあ 50% ぐらい。So at the opening session, opening ceremony, you said you are now playing the 30% of your life is FF14, but at the beginning it was 50%. Is it?
そうですね、まあ 50% ぐらいですね。
12時間ですからね。
はい。寝てない時間でいうと8割方で、食事を除いてしまうとほぼ 100% みたいな。
Let's see, yeah, it's pretty much 50%. I'm thinking about time I spend not sleeping. I think 14 took up about 80%. If I remove the time I would spend eating, I think I would be online 100%.
いやでもその対談に際してまあ坂口さんとてもお忙しいですし、それでもやっぱりこうまずちゃんと14プレイしてからじゃないと対談に臨むには失礼だって思っていただけたこと自体がやっぱり坂口さん本当にすごい人だなってその時ちょっとねチーム内でもそんな話をしてたんです。
Yeah, I remember back when we were thinking of having that session where we do the talk session, and I know Sakaguchi-san, you're extremely busy yourself, but you said very kindly that it would be rude of you not to play 14 in advance of that talk session, so that there would be some preparation. So I remember thinking back then, wow, that's amazing, and we even discussed that point in the dev team as well.
その当時今でも覚えてるんですけど、開発チーム内は坂口さんの当時のツイッターを見ていつまで続けてくれるんだろうってすごいドキドキしてましたみんな。
Yeah, so in the dev team, of course, we were keeping track of your progress on Twitter, and there were some people who were saying, how long will he hang in there? I'm not sure. Like, we were feeling a bit nervous almost.
いやもうなんていうか逆にもう出れないですね今でももう私の人生の一部となっております。
Oh man, no, actually, yeah, it's quite the opposite. Now I can't leave. Final Fantasy XIV has become part of my life.
Wow. 僕一個覚えてるんですけど、ミストウォーカーの皆さんともちょっとお話しした時に坂口さんすごく楽しくプレイしていて、で坂口さんご自身からもミストウォーカーのみんなもねすごい理解を示してくれてるんだよねって坂口さんからは聞いたんですよ。
So I remember one interesting thing. Also, there was a discussion happening with back at the time when you were like playing 14, you were really having fun, and I know that there was a discussion within Mistwalker, and I heard from you, Sakaguchi-san, that everyone in the team at Mistwalker was saying that they were all very understanding of the situation.
All right. それをミストウォーカーの方に伝えたら、いくつ会議ぶっ飛んでると思ってるんですか
And then when I told that to the people in Mistwalker, they're like, what? No, what do you mean in that meeting?
いやもうねレイドとか始まると 終われないですからしょうがないですよね。しょうがないです。しょうがない。
I mean, yeah, once I'm in a raid, like, I can't attend a meeting. I just can't.
Everyone here can です。みんなここにいる皆さんはね理解してくれると思います。ありがとうございます。じゃあ次のテーマに行ってみたいと思います。So let's move to the next theme. Please change the slide. This one. So next theme is
FC ハウスを、作ろうということになってプレイしてから1年今2年ちょうど経ったぐらいなんですけどプレイして1年後ぐらいかなに作ったんですけどその時にせっかくこういうなんていうのメッセージブックのシステムがあるんでそれまでの FF に関連した人たちから一人一人メッセージをもらって書こうと決めて、結果120人ぐらいかな、いただいて吉田さんからもメッセージいただいて、っていうノートブックですね。
Yeah, so what you're seeing here is from my free company estate about a year ago. Of course, right now I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV for about 2 years at this point. But so when I set up my free company in the estate, because the housing does have this message book system, I had people who were related or relevant to Final Fantasy and the production thereof and have them sign the book. I actually had Mr. Yoshida sign it as well. So I think I have about 120 messages in the book now.
Yeah, as you can see, for our English-speaking audience, we added the translation to each message, so you can find out who the commenter, each commenter is. 英語の皆さんのために今回英訳もちょっと足しましてどんなメンバーがコメントしてるかをちょっとご覧いただけるかと思います。
いやもうレジェンドだらけですよ本当に。
Well, as you can see, they're all legends.
いやそういうことを坂口さんが始めたらしいっていうのを聞いた時になんか俺めっちゃ怒られるんじゃないかなと思って。
When I heard Sakaguchi-san that you started such a thing like this, I thought I'm going to be in a lot of trouble.
いやいやもう本当にメールとかダイレクトメッセージでみんなに問い合わせたんですけどもうあっという間に集まってやっぱりなんかみんな FF を作ったり、あと宣伝関係の人にも声かけたんですけどなんかやっぱり FF に携わる中でやっぱりなんかみんな熱い気持ちはいまだに持っていてじゃあこういうノートを作ろうって言ったらもう本当にみんな前向きに、書いてくれてありがたいですね。
For sure, yeah. I reached out to these different developers as well as some of the people who are just relevant with the promotion of the title through email as well as direct messages. And so many people gathered so quickly. So I think those who were involved with the production of Final Fantasy or those who are promoting the game really felt something in their heart that they wanted to share. So it was great. Everybody came together to put this notebook together.
今でもハウスに普通に遊びに行ったら見れるんですか他のプレイヤーも。
So even now, if we go to your housing, would we be able to see it, like maybe other p携who come to visit?
もうこのまんま置いてあるので、これともう一冊で開発FF に携わった人たちのメッセージあと他にもエッチな本っていうのは例えば置いてあってそれは僕が書ける限界ギリギリで当時スクエアで起きたエッチな話を書き込んであったりもします。
And yes, I actually have this message book available for everybody to see as is, so players can visit and look at the messages. And then we have, of course, the messages from the Final Fantasy related people, but at the same time I have this naughty book that I tried to make sure that, of course, censoring it to an extent, but things that are a little naughty that I am able to divulge.
それ当時の人が見たら誰と誰のことを言ってるか微妙に分かったりするんですよね。
So if the people who this naughty book is referring to see that, they kind of sort of know who it's talking about, right?
そうですね。もうみんな分かってしまう。そんなになんていうのかな。ちょっと例えば徹夜する女性のグラフィックの子とか言ったんですけど、その子はやっぱり寝やすいんで応接の一番いいソファで寝ちゃうんですよ。で次の日僕が朝面接でそこを使うんですけど なんだろう、ポワーンと香水の匂いとこう何とも言えないこう女性の部屋に入ってしまったかのようなっていうエピソードとか、はい、そういう。
Yeah, I think probably people might be able to surmise what's going on. But I mean, I say naughty, but it's not explicit. For example, there was somebody on the graphics team, this woman who would need to stay over to work overnight, and she would utilize the large meeting room to kind of take her rest in. And the next day, I had to use that room for an interview. And so a woman was laying there, and then her fragrance, I guess, kind of left a lingering scent in there. That's the kind of stuff that I write.
I feel it's better to stop right now for this topic.
ここまで。
Yeah.
あ、もうちょっと暴れさせてくれよ。
このトピックはここまででやめた方がいいんじゃないかなってちょっと感じ。
まあでもアルティマニアにも載ってないようなネタがここに行けば読めると。
But hey, this is a great opportunity to hear things which aren't even in Ultimania.
Alright, so 皆さんもぜひ見に行ってみてください。So yeah, you are on by your own. Please visit the FC House Square Development Room and then find out what's there. So let's move to the next topic. 次のトピックに行きたいと思います。お願いします。
おう。あれ？
あ、これはね、つい先日撮っちゃいました。
What's
Oh,
this?
I just recently got this.
絶ですよね。
絶です。
From Ultimate, right?
行ってたんですか？
行きました。
You went and did Ultimate?
Yes.
おい。そんなことを一言もおっしゃってませんでしたね。いや、he never told about that.
知らなかった。
I had no idea.
だって俺チェックした時このスクリーンショットなかったよ。だって。
Back when I checked the material, I didn't see the screenshot there.
True, actually the theme is, please proceed, and the title is, yeah, end game, tackling end game content. Yeah, they was talking about the end game content, but the screenshot was not this one. エンドゲームの話をしましょう。エンドゲーム坂口さんどんなですかっていうのを聞こうと思ってたんですけど、このスクリーンショットじゃなかったですね。
そうですね、そうですね。まだそう言われてお渡しした時はなんか霊式かなんかのスクショだったんですけど、はい。
That's true. When I was instructed to share a screenshot of end content, I think I provided them with a Savage Raid.
絶ですよねこれ。
そうなんです。ちょっとこっそりやろうかなと思って。まあ、せっかくイベントも呼んでいただいたし、なんとかこのイベントに間に合わせたいなってみんなで頑張ってたんですけど、なんとか、どうだろう、10日前ぐらいとかかな、それこそクリアできてですね。よし間に合ったみたいな。
But this is Ultimate, right?
Yes, I wanted to keep it a secret, you know, and because I was invited to this event, I was like, okay, we want to do this just in time for the event. And I think we cleared the ultimate content 10 days ago. I was so relieved that we were able to make it in time.
もうコメントが一体どうなってるんだ。そりゃ会議もなくなるわって。
I'm looking at the comments here and they're saying, oh, what's going to happen? I think meetings won't even be a thing anymore.
And it also says the legend is becoming an actual legend. レジェンドがレジェンドになったぞって今コメントが盛り上がってますね。
はい。いやーこれ光る武器が欲しかったんですよね。
But yeah, I wanted a shiny weapon.
いやでも実際そのツイッターとかでこうプレイを日々レポートされてるの拝見してて、レイドってどこまでやるのかなってまあ開発チームでも言ってたんですね。
Yeah, but as I was saying, we were seeing your progress on Twitter. You were always reporting about what content you've got up to. And in terms of raids in particular, we were wondering how far you would get. And we were discussing that in the dev team.
なんかあっという間でしたね、ここまで。
そうですね。
It was no time at all and that you've reached this point.
はい。まあなんだろう、でもその難しかったけど、まあ、霊式と違ってこうテンポがすごく良かったので、なんかまたこう違うニュアンスを14の中で見つけて、すごく楽しくなんか攻略できた感じありましたけど。
Of course, it was very challenging, but the tempo was really good when I was playing through it, and so I feel like I was able to see another nuance within Final Fantasy XIV. So it was a lot of fun trying to get through this.
まあ実際坂口さんといえば、まあ、エヴァクエストだったりとか、まあ、それから当然「ファイナルファンタジー11」まさに作ろうっておっしゃった、まあ、ご本人ですし、 ただこういうその14の8人レイドみたいなのってそういったMMO にはなかったテンポのこうバトルだと思うんですね。実際そのレイド始めてみてこうどう感じたのかなと。
Yeah, so I know Sakaguchi-san, back in the day you were a fan of EverQuest, and you were actually the person who suggested to make Final Fantasy XI. But the 8-person raids that we have in 14, they have a completely different tempo to the MMOs compared to back in the day. So after you started playing these raids, I was wondering just how you felt about it.
まあやっぱりなんていうのかな、こう8人でもまあ24人のでもそうですけど。レイドをこうみんなで役割分もちろんまあ MMO なんだからそうなんだけど役割分担してどれだけ楽しませようっていうのに、まあ、かなりやっぱり知恵を絞って作られてるなっていうのと、まあ、ただそうは言っても最初の頃はエバクエの癖とかが残ってたのでなんていうんですか、ヘイト取るのにまずあれってタンクが先にずっと殴ってるじゃないですか一人で。でヘイト取ってからみんな攻めるみたいななんかそういう。そこも含めてなんていうかな、もっと遊びやすくこうものすごくこう昔のものに比べてこう改良というか、はい、考え抜かれてるなっていうのはすごく感じました。
Of course, with the 8-person raid, same goes for 24-person raids as well. I think we would have our roles and we would kind of discuss where people will be standing within the positions. And I can sense that the development team had sort of racked their brains on making it such an enjoyable fight for all the players that are participating. And of course, earlier on, I would still have like muscle memory from EverQuest, and I didn't know how to take aggro from the enemy. I would need to wait for the tank to go in and then have them sort of continuously attack, and then everybody else kind of joins in. But I think, yeah, it feels very intuitive. It feels really nice, and compared to the olden days of some of these games that were set up, I think it has been improved upon so that it is kind of easy to jump onto.
今日本できっとレイド、まあ70のレイドを作ってる連中がいるんですけど、大変喜んでると思います今のコメント。
I'm sure now in Japan, well, there's a team who made the 7.0 raids, and I'm sure they are super happy to hear that.
いやもう楽しみにしてるので、なんだろう、早くくれって感じです。
I am so excited for it. Like I can't wait. Like please give me the content now. Hurry.
Oh yeah, everyone agrees. 皆さん同意されてますね。それはそうだ。
いやいや待ってください。絶もしかしてまだ続けていくご予定あるんですか？
So hold on a moment. I just want to ask one thing. Do you have an intention to continue tackling Ultimate?
Good question.
まあやっぱりオレンジ色のも欲しいですよね。
For sure, yeah. I want next the
オレン
orange
ジ
shiny.
オレンジワン。
じゃあバハムートあたりとか
ね、そうですね。アレキか。まあわからないですけどやりたいですね。はい。
Maybe Ultimate Bahamut or Alexander Perfect.
ミストウォーカーの皆さん大変申し訳ございません。
Mistwalker, the team at Mistwalker, I apologize.
Yeah, we do
sincerely.
apologize.
I'm so sorry. ちなみに会場で絶どれかクリアしたことあるよっていう人。
So, out of interest, how many here in the venue have cleared Ultimate?
Oh wow.
結構います。でもですよ。
There's quite a lot of you, but still,
一番難しいコンテンツシリーズですからね。
it's the most difficult series of content there is.
参りました。ありがとうございます。
I'm at a loss of words.
楽しませていただきました。
Yes.
Alright, then let's move to the next topic. では次のトピックに参りましょう。こちらです。What is this? The theme is Mr. Sakaguchi's crafting endeavors. クラフター活動も熱心にしていただいてますが。
そうですね。やっぱりまあこう着せ替えができるのとかなりいろんなもの作れるじゃないですか。でもちょっと、まあ、そういう意味ではクリエイター魂がここで開花してしまってですね。で一応僕坂口なので 坂口という、若干商標的に問題があるのかもしれないですけどという名称にしてですね、で作った人の名前入るじゃないですか。なので、皆さんにこうゲーム内で配ったり、して楽しんでますね。
Yeah, it's interesting because we can put glamour on our characters, and with crafting we can create a lot of different things. So as a creator, I really want to get my hands on something like that. So I took my name Sakaguchi and kind of did a play on words, Sakaguchi. Sorry, it might be kind of taboo from a copyright or trademark perspective, but I named it as such. And then once you craft an item, you see your name written on the displays. So I would craft some items and then pass it out in game and such.
ぜひですね、この会場にどなたかグッチ関係者ないしはその親戚知り合いにグッチの関係者のいる方はですね、ぜひ私がコンタクトを取りたいとお伝えください。
If anybody here actually works for the brand Gucci, or anybody who knows somebody or is related to, we would love to get connected.
いやでもすごい売れ行きで、かつ転売を防ぐのに一度こう購入してくださったお客さんとコンテンツに行って、そのいわゆるこう転売できなくするようにバインドしてっていうアイデアでやられてたんですよね。
Oh, but yeah, so I think they sold really well, but to prevent a resale, you had this idea of going into content so that the gear binds, so then you would not be able to resale.
やっぱり14世界をなんていうか乱したくなかったので、システム上できるかなと思ったら、そうですね、コンテンツに行くかないしはその場で、ブグ投影でいいんですかねをしてもらってバインドしてもらうことで、そうすると一切も本当に転売が起こらないので、もうやっぱり経済も一つのねこの MMO の楽しみの一つなので、乱さないようになんとか頑張ってます。
For sure, I didn't want to disrupt the world of Final Fantasy XIV. So looking at what is available in the systems, I think having them equip the crafted gear and going into the content, or just have them glamour it onto themselves right there on the spot, would allow for people to, or prevent people from taking the items and listing it onto the market boards. So yeah, I wanted to make sure that I am sort of protecting the integrity.
そのあたりのやっぱりこうアイデアというか、すぐシステムを理解された上でこうすればこうなるじゃんみたいな。でかつすごいなと思ったのが、購入するだけじゃなくて坂口さんのキャラクターとコンテンツに行って例えばね記念写真撮ったりもできるっていうことなので、ものすごいアイデアだなと思って。
Yeah, but I think that idea that you had, you kind of understand how the system works, and by understanding so, you can think, okay, I want to do it this way, so if I do it that way, it will work. And so the players, they don't just purchase the content, but by going, they don't just purchase the gear, but by going into the content, they can challenge content with you and also take a commemorative photo. So I think that's a fantastic idea.
なんか僕にとってはそれでこう新しい友人ができる感覚っていうのもあって、そこも MMO のすごい醍醐味ですからね。すごい僕自身もものすごい楽しんで、やってる感じですね。
Yeah, and it's a great opportunity to make new friends by doing this, and I think that's what makes an MMO so interesting and fun. So yeah, I'm enjoying doing that as well.
ありがとうございます。Thank you very much. So let's move to the next topic. 次のテーマいきましょう。こちらです。So this is favorite BGM.
これですね。これはこれ以外にもかかってると思うんです。オープニングのね、というかテーマ曲ですね。FF のあれは未だにやっぱりかかるとこう胸がぐっとこう締め付けられるというか、上松さんのコンサートとかでもやりますけど、そこもやっぱりこうちょっと涙出てくるんですね、メロディーは。なのでもうこの時ももう飛び上がった時にここで流すなよテーマ曲って。
Yeah, so this is where we hear that sort of opening theme song play, and every time that I hear this song, I still feel my heart kind of being squeezed, and I get very emotional. We have Mr. Uematsu's works being performed in concerts nowadays, but when I see this taking flight and then the music plays, I'm like, oh no, I get teary. It's like, oh, did you have to play that music there? And I get so moved.
なんか最近の例えばルビカンテとかあそこら辺の戦闘曲もそうですけど、うまく上松さんのメロディーをしかももう完全になんていうか現代風っていうとおかしいんだけど14風にきっちりこうアレンジしてかかるのが、もうあれは癖になりますね。素晴らしい本当に14の音楽の仕事だと思います。はい。
I think most recently, the battle with Rubicante or the different arch fiends really incorporate Mr. Uematsu's melody, and I guess it's not necessarily making it more modernized, but it's more making it 14-like and making that rearrangement, and it works so well.
サウンドディレクターの曽健が、本当にいつも言うんですけど、FF の音楽っていうのは上松さんの音楽なんだと。だからこうもちろんその上松さんだったらどう解釈するんだろうとか、ここのシーンできっとこういう音楽が FF だったら流れるはずだっていうのが常にやっぱり曽健のベースにあるっていうところと、アレンジさせてもらう時にやっぱり14のこのシチュエーションに合うアレンジは何だろうっていうのを常に考えてるっていつも言ってるので、多分そういうところを感じていただけたんなら多分曽健めっちゃ喜ぶと思います。
ありがとうございます。Thank you very much.
So yeah, the sound director Soken says it all the time, but the music from Final Fantasy is Mr. Uematsu's music. So whenever there's a track he's going to arrange something to put into 14, he would always think, how would Mr. Uematsu interpret this? In this scene, what type of music would be playing out? So he's always conscious of that and trying to arrange it into that, in 14, whatever situation would be suitable from Mr. Uematsu's perspective. And I think Sakaguchi-san probably felt that. So I think Soken would be extremely happy to hear that.
ありがとうございます。Thank you very much. I completely forgot waiting for the translation. Sorry about that. 翻訳を待つのを忘れてしまいました。申し訳ありません。Q&A に行く前にですね、もう一つテーマございます。こちらはいかがでしょうか。So we have one more topic before going to Q&A.
これはあれですよね。ストーリー上の話ですね。はい。これはもうこの森に来た時の異世界観とか、あとシナリオでなんていうのかな、こう詩のようにこう情景を語るようなやり方もしてるじゃないですか。もうあれも含めてこう、この後クリスタリムに行くんですけど、なんていうかぐっとこう掴まれた、いいストーリーいっぱいあるんですけど、ここはやっぱり一番掴まれたところですかね。はい。
Oh yes, this is on the story. So when I first landed into this forest, I just felt that sort of different realm, that isekai, that sort of different realm feeling. And the scenario is kind of narrated almost as if though somebody's reciting a poem or a song of sorts. And I felt that it was really conveyed well. And from here we would go into the Crystarium, and just my heart was really grabbed at that moment. I mean, there were many elements in the story that I really liked, but this was one of my favorites.
そう言っていただけるとめちゃくちゃ嬉しいんですけど、やっぱりこの漆黒のタイミングっていうのは、まさに異世界へ行く、一旦英雄というかその光の戦士という名前を反転させて全く未知の物語に突入するっていうところを表現したかったので、かなり慎重に冒頭特に作ってた部分なんですね。
Yeah, so when you put it that way, it makes me extremely glad to hear. But especially for Shadowbringer's timing, this was when I wanted to flip the perspective. So by incorporating that kind of otherworld element, we were kind of putting a reverse on the Warrior of Light, and it was this kind of expression as part of the beginning stage of the title that we put a lot of effort into.
だからこういうバンっていきなり局面が変わるようなことって毎回やるとそれはそれで飽きるので、 貯めてまたやる機会をしっかり作っていきたいなとはニヤニヤしながら思ってる次第です。
So rather than just kind of putting it all out at this point, I want to kind of build it up, and then gradually release it. And so I'm kind of grinning inside until that opportunity comes.
プレイしてちょうど1周年経った時にヨシピーもインしてくれてなんかお祝いをいただいたんですけど、それもここのちょっと離れた塔の上です。もうここ大好きなんです、この紫の方に。
Yeah, I celebrated my 1-year anniversary playing Final Fantasy XIV, and Mr. Yoshida was kind enough to appear and celebrate it with me. And it was actually within Lakeland. It was in a tower away from this area shown here, but I just love this location.
いやでも確かにそうでしたね。お祝いに駆けつけた時ここ指定でしたもんね。
Oh yeah, that's right. When back then when I joined you, it was around this right, wasn't it?
まあもともとここはその原初世界のまあ対になってるエリアからまあ紫の印象を持ってきて異世界観を作るぞって言ってたんですけど、やっぱ紫でベースのイメージを作るって本当に大変だったんで、まさにちょっと開発パネルにねさっき言った志田君も含めてめっちゃみんなで作っていったので褒めていただけると本当嬉しいです。
本当綺麗ですね。
But yeah, so the setting that we have here is kind of like a twin location that's coming originally from the source, but this kind of purple coloring to express that otherworldly perspective is extremely difficult to express. So it's all down to the hard efforts of, for example, in the previous dev panel, Shida-san and his efforts. So when you put it that way, it makes me extremely glad.
Oh yeah, it was really beautiful.
Thank you very much. So this is a wrap of the talk session part, and then I'd like to move to the Q&A session. トークセッションをここまでにさせていただきまして Q&A の方に移りたいと思います。で仕組みの方をご説明しますと、私が質問を読み上げると同時に画面の方には、質問文が、表示されます。で日本語訳もそっちについてますので全部読み上げるとですね時間かかりますので日本語では読み上げませんので日本語でご覧の皆さんは画面の方で質問のご確認をお願いいたします。So how it works, let me explain how it works. I will read the question and at the same time on the screen you will see the question text, and then Sakaguchi-san and Yoshida-san will answer the question, make answers. Yeah. So let's start with this question. So when designing a game, how much are community expectation, feedback, and responses to previous titles taken into consideration? いかがでしょうか。坂口さん。はい。
いやもちろん重要視はするんですけどもまあ、あとは何ていうのかな、今回の作品のその最初の頃の反応とかないしは何しろじゃあ何本売れたのとかそういったものって意外とそれそのものが前作の評価だったり、まあ、特に FF っていうのはこうつながっていってるのでそれぞれがもういろんな意味でつながってるっていう感覚がすごくあって、なんていうんですかね、感想だけじゃなくて前作に基づいて作られるし今作ってるものは未来に向かってこれは実はのまた一歩っていうか、はい、という階段のような感じで感じてますけど。
Of course, it is very important. We look at some of the community expectations and feedback, but also Final Fantasy is a series, and so with each installment within the franchise, we would look at the reactions that are made, and then some of the materials that we've utilized for the story. That kind of defines the previous work, but then we kind of build on that and we kind of continue in the series. At least I feel that way. So not just the feedback, but also some of the comments and then the sentiment that we receive, we kind of use as the foundation of our next installment. And then what we're doing now is kind of like a stepping stone for the future installment. So it feels like a staircase almost.
How about you, 吉田さん。吉田さんいかがでしょうか。
でもですか。僕結構作るタイトルによって変わるんですよね。どれぐらいこう比重を置くかは。
For me, it depends really on the title that I'm working on. It's that kind of the amount of weight that I place on that feedback.
まあ例えば14だととにかくやっぱり MMO で僕ら開発チームもたくさんプレイしてますけど、皆さんの方がやっぱプレイ時間長いのでどうしても。だからこそユーザーインターフェース周りとか快適性というところに関してはフィードバックをとことんこう取り入れていこうという姿勢になります。
So of course, 14 is an MMO, and a lot of the dev team do play the game, and they've been playing the game for a very long time. And so we are very receptive of feedback. So when it comes to things such as the UI, making things easier for players to follow, we try to incorporate those elements of feedback.
でまあ今回14、16と FF シリーズこう関わらせていただいて、やっぱりその坂口さん、上松さん、こう皆さんでこう作り上げてきた、まさに今ちょっと階段というお話されてましたけど、やっぱそこをこうつないでいく、先へつないでいく途中の一人でもあると思ってやっているので、やっぱり前作のを見た上で大事に改めてしたいところと、未来へバトンを渡すためにあえてもう挑戦していかないとこの先って考える部分が、50%ぐらいでした。はい。
And so I've had the opportunity to work on not only 14 but 16 from the FF series. And I think what you mentioned previously, it's going back to the previous content that you, Mr. Uematsu and you, Sakaguchi-san, have worked on. When looking at previous titles, I think it's important to stay true to those kind of important elements from the previous titles, but it's also important to keep challenging, to take on new challenges. So I think when it comes to that perspective, the breakdown for me would be 50-50.
Thank you very much. So let's move to the next question to Sakaguchi-san. Where did you get the idea for the first Final Fantasy game?
一作目ですね。その前に PC でロールプレイングゲームを実は作っていたんですけども、やっぱり当時のファミコンっていうのはそのロムカセットの容量っていうのはものすごく小さくて、ロープレは入らないだろうなっていう感覚で、ファミコンっていうのはもうアクションゲームのマシンなんだってちょっと思い込んでたところあるんですよね。でそこにドラゴンクエストっていうのはやっぱり出て、ですごくセーブ元打ちはできなかったので、文字を打ち込んでそのセーブデータの代わりにするとものすごくアイデアも豊富で、できるんだっていうのはまずそこがショックで、目が覚めたと言いますか、もともとロープレを作りたい、ロープレを楽しんでた派だったので、もうそこがきっかけでもうとにかく作ろうっていう、ことですね。
The first Final Fantasy. So I used to create RPGs on the PC platform back then, and when I was looking at the Famicom or the Nintendo system and whatever ROM that goes into the cassettes, I imagined, I don't think a role-playing game could fit in the capacity that is so limited with the Nintendo cassettes. And so I always thought that the Nintendo system was more for action games, and I had that sort of preconceived notion. That's when Dragon Quest came out, and because there was no capabilities of having saved data on the ROM, they had this system where you would input a whole bunch of letters so that the game can resume where you had left off. And that was such a great idea. There were some other ideas that were also very brilliant that was incorporated, and I was just shocked to see, wow, you could actually fit an RPG in a Famicom cassette. And so I think that was one of the big influences, and I really wanted to build a role-playing game on this platform. I always enjoyed it, so that's what got me into it.
その企画段階から、僕リアルタイムには遊ばせて当然もらってるんですけど、映画的というか、そのなんていうんですか、そのデジタルコンテンツですけどゲームってまるで映画だなと思ってたんですね。演出もそうだし物語性もそう。それは最初から意識してたんですか？
So I played the original Final Fantasy when it was originally released, but the impression that I got was it's very much akin to a movie. So of course the game is digital content, but when I was playing through Final Fantasy, I got really like a movie experience. For example, the theatrics and such. Was that already in mind back at the planning stages?
まあものすごく映画大好き子だったので、はい、もちろんその影響大きいのと、なんだろうな、まあ最初の PC の頃からなんですけど、とにかく画面は綺麗にしたいんですよ。美しさってやっぱりゲームのすごく大事な部分だと思うし、自分が生み出すんだったら何しろ極力美しくあってほしいというか、まあその延長線上にやっぱり演出みたいなのも多分、はい、入ってくるのかなと思うんですけど。
For sure. I love movies, so maybe that plays a large role into the cinematic feel of it. And plus, even when I was developing on the PC, I always wanted to have a pretty picture on screen. And so I would love to maintain that sort of aesthetic. I wanted things to be beautiful as much as possible whenever I'm creating it. So I think that kind of tied into how the cinematics were presented also.
ちょっと50になってヒントをいただいた気持ちでした。なんかこう美しいってまあどうしても画面が綺麗とかクオリティっていう風になっちゃうんですよね。僕らの世代って。でも要は美しいゲーム美しくありたい。それはもう演出もそのやってる人たちのその美しさを見せたいっていう。そっからこうゲームデザインに落ちていくっていうのは結構今衝撃だったので。俺得でした。
Yeah, I think now that I'm 50, I kind of appreciate it. So, of course, there's always like a focus on beautiful image, on the quality of the image. But when cinematics is incorporated into the game, it really becomes something that you can appreciate. So I'm really glad.
Thank you very much. So let's next question to Sakaguchi-san です。Do you have any stories to tell about the early days of developing the FF series or members who were involved in development like Mr. Amano and Mr. Uematsu?
もういいんですね。そっか、天野さんと上松さんの上松さんには僕はとっても失礼なことをしてしまってなんていうのかな、上松さんが最初に FF の音楽出してきた時に。これって一回全没にしたらきっともっと良くなるんじゃないかなっていう勝手な思い込みがあって全没にしたんですよね。そしたら上松さんが、当時カセットテープに音楽を録音して持ってくるんですけど1週間ぐらい経ったからかなまたカセットを持ってきてできたよでそれを聞いたらものすごく良かったんでもう素晴らしいと上松さんこれだよって言ったら曲順並べ替えただけなんだよねって
Let's see, Amano-san and Uematsu-san episodes. Oh, I do have an anecdote of Mr. Uematsu. I did something really terrible almost for Uematsu-san. I thought to myself, okay, maybe if I rejected all of his ideas, maybe he can make it more improved when he comes back with a new one. So he would submit his proposal on a cassette tape. Okay, here are the tracks that I would like for you to listen to. And I rejected them all. I was like, no, I want you to do better. And so 1 week later, he comes back. And I noticed that there's a change. It's like, oh, this is wonderful, Mr. Uematsu, this is great. And he comes back and tells me, oh, well, but I just changed the orders of the songs that were in there.
それは一曲すら変わってなかったんです。
So not a single track was changed.
もう曲順を変えただけ。
No, just literally changed the order in which they were played.
Wow.
怖っ。
That's scary.
うちのスタッフもたまにいますよそういうやつこの SE どうしてもまだ前に出てきてないからどうしてもここは前に出すんだって言って2週間後に「あ直しました」って言ってで聞いたら「直ってなくね?」って言ったら「いや分かんねえと思ってそのままで出しました」って。
Yeah, you know, there's some kind of folks like that in our dev team as well. Like, for example, there's some sound effects which are not yet implemented. So I would say, you know, go back and do it again. And so then we'd be waiting 2 weeks and they would come back with the same thing. And I'm like, hey, wait, this is exactly the same, right? And they're like, well, I thought you wouldn't tell.
でも順番の入れ替えってイメージ全然変わるからまんまとやられた感だったんですかね、坂口さん。
But I think when it's involving like a switch in the order, you kind of get a different impression. So maybe you were completely bamboozled by that, or you were done.
いやなんだろう、聞く前から一回全没にするって決めてたんで、まあ僕が悪いですね。
I mean, I've
はい、僕が
already
悪いです。
I've already set in my mind that okay, no matter what I hear, I'm just going to reject it all. So I mean, it's my fault.
じゃあ聞いてもいないでそのままボツにしたってことですか、最初のやつは。
So wait a minute, you didn't even listen to it and you just rejected it?
聞いててもこういう流れていく聞き方ですよね。最初1回目はね。
Yeah, the first time it was like in the left ear, out the right ear.
上松さん申し訳ありません。I'm sorry to 上松。Sorry.
Thank you very much. So let's move to the next question to both Sakaguchi-san and Yoshida-san. Yep. Many jobs in the Final Fantasy series are familiar to the fantasy genre, like warrior, thief, and monk, but others are more unique, like Beastmaster, Onion Knight, Red Mage, and Summoner. What were the inspirations of these unique jobs? いかがでしょうか。じゃあまず坂口さんいかがでしょうか。
これはちょっとこういう質問があるよって事前にちょっと、はい、教えていただいたので資料をちょっと持ってきたんですけど、映りますかね。
So I was made aware of the questions ahead of time, so I actually prepared something.
はい、これは石井浩一っていう政権とか作った、はい、彼がデザインしてくれた原画なんですけど、だから最初のアイデアっていうのは職種としては面白いものを作りたいと思うけど、やっぱり玉ねぎ剣士とかっていうのはビジュアルから入ってきていて、彼が可愛い剣士を描いたらなんか玉ねぎだよなっていうところで玉ねぎ剣士で、僕はなんで玉ねぎってなるんですけど、でも絵にはやっぱ説得力があって、こいつは玉ねぎ剣士だよなって感じがありますよね。
So as you can see here, this is illustration done by Koichi Ishii. He's made different Final Fantasy as well as Saga series, or not Saga, sorry, Mana series characters. And so a lot of the images that are shown here are, of course, some of the ideas that came out with in terms of jobs, but sometimes I would look at a piece of visual image and then determine what the job is. So for example, he drew this warrior that is very rotund and kind of round, and it just felt like an onion. So you would wonder, like, why an onion knight? But I mean, it feels very much like an onion if you look at it.
いやでも石井さん、とてもお優しい人なんですけど、僕入社したスクエアエニックスに入社した時に初めて石井さんとお会いした時、真っ白な上下のスーツに髪バーンオールバックでエナメルのピカピカした靴を履いて向こうから歩かれてきた時に、俺なんていう会社に入ったんだろうって。
Yeah, Ishii-san, he's a very nice person, but I remember back when I first joined Square Enix and I met him for the first time, and on the top half he was wearing like this white suit, and he had like these shiny shoes, and he just looked like a bit of a character. I was just like, what kind of a company have I joined now?
人間は見た目ではわからない、ものすごいいい例ですよね、彼はね。
Do not judge a book by its cover. I think this is a very good example of that.
いやでも E3 とかでお会いするたびに本当に頑張ってるねって言ってすごい声かけて褒めてくださるんで、本当に石井さんいつもありがとうございます。でも本当に可愛いですよね。
最初はあれだったんですね、石化すると正面小僧になってたんですよ。
But yeah, whenever I met him at E3, he would always be saying, "Yo, you're doing your best. You're doing a great job." So he's always really nice in that respect. But I mean, going back to the designs, so cute, right?
Yeah, one of the characters, when it is petrified, it turns into one of those peeing dolls.
もうあれですよ、コメント大爆笑の嵐になってます。
Oh man, people are just having a ball in the comments.
僕は今度その14で新ジョブ考える時っていうのはどっちかというとやっぱフィードバック優先なのと、もう一個ゲームデザイン上今あるジョブの中でさらにメカニクスが変わった新しい面白さを持つジョブってなんだろうなっていうふうに考えて、14の場合はすごい決めてます。みんなで話し合って。
But yeah, when it comes to introducing new jobs in 14, I always place priority on feedback, but also at the same time, I look at it from a game design perspective. So what type of job would, if we introduce, would change the mechanics and would be interesting? So we always discuss that together with the team.
今回このバイパー発表したんですけど、開発チームでコンペのように何アイデアも出すんですけど、最後まで残ってたのは3つぐらいありましたよ。
So this time we announced the job Viper at the Fan Fest, but we always have sort of like an internal contest of sorts, like people pitch their ideas, and in this time we ended up with 3 ideas that would like the final candidates.
教えてくんないのそれは何か。いや別に落ちたやつでいいから。
Do I get to hear what these 3 candidates are?
毎回出てきてはギリギリでやっぱむずいなってなるのは、ハンマー使うジョブが毎回なんとかしたいねって言ってねってなって落ちていくのは多いですね。
Yeah, a lot of the time there is one particular job. It's like always jobs that we want to introduce a job which has a hammer, but every time it gets, it's kind of going there, but then at the last minute, it always just doesn't work out. And
あれいいですね。ハンマーだったら直接攻撃なんだけど空振りがたまにあって、でも空振りしたら地面叩くんで地震が起きるってことですか。
Oh, so a hammer, like a large hammer, so you would swing it and sometimes you might miss, and then if you miss, you'd hit the ground and cause an earthquake perhaps.
それ素晴らしいアイデアだと思うんですけど、実装するじゃないですか。
That's an amazing idea, but when you implement it,
皆さんから来るフィードバックがもう僕予想つくんですよ。
but I can already imagine what feedback we would get from players.
確実にそのアースクウェイクが起こるタイミングをちゃんと作ってくれって言われるんですよ。確率じゃなくて。
Yeah, they would say, I don't want the earthquake to happen by chance, but I want it to definitely happen.
なんかちょっと一番なんですか、僕らもちょっとコンフューズしてたアイデアとしてはダブルシールドジョブっていうのもありましたよ。
There was one job in particular which we found confusing. It was like a double shield job.
そうタンクなんですけど、どっちの手にもシールドついてて。
It would be like a tank job, and you would have like a shield on either hand.
それ攻撃になってねえじゃんみたいな話でボツりましたけど、はい。
But yeah, we were like, hey, well, I mean, there's no attack involved. And naturally, that was dropped.
ありがとうございます。Thank you very much. So let's move to the next question to 坂口さん。坂口さんへの次の質問です。Are there any ideas you would like to include into the Final Fantasy series, but ultimately didn't? いかがでしょうか。
なんていうか現実的じゃないものはもちろん実装なんかできないので当たり前に実現できてないんですけど、ただなんていうか最初の1作目からやっぱりこう思ってたしチームに言ってたのは、後半例えば何かアイデアを思いついてもその全部今のに入れろと、もう多少作り直してもいいからもう全部詰め込んで 120% 詰め込んで空っぽになんなきゃもう次作れないし、今何しろ今作ってるものはダメになるからっていうんで、なんだろう、可能な限り毎回昔は詰め込んでましたね。はい。
Of course, anything that's too far out and unrealistic is something that I could not make happen, of course. But I think every time, and starting from the first Final Fantasy, I always thought, even if you think of something later on in the production phase, let's go ahead and put it into the game. We want everything that we want to put into the game. So we pack it in 120% what we can and try to empty out all the ideas we want to do in the particular game as much as possible.
だから開発の後半になって思いついたアイデアで、本当にそれでゲームが面白くなるんだったら、もう次回作にしようとかじゃなくて、もうとにかく今入れる努力をしろっていうことですよね。
So it's not, for example, that you get into the second half of the development and you think, okay, I'd like to incorporate this in the next installment, but you just basically want to put it all in the current one, right?
当時だんだんスケジュールが発売に迫ってくると、坂口さんの大号令でいくつかのチームが並走してたとしても、よし明日から全員5ねみたいな号令がかかってたって僕聞いたんですけど。
So I remember hearing that when the release was coming close, there was an order from you, Sakaguchi-san, to change up the team structure, and you were like, okay, now we're working on 5.
全てじゃないですけど、はい、やっぱり、そうわがままだったんですかね。はい、いやいいからやるよっていう。
I mean, we wouldn't put all of our chickens in one basket. So, I mean, I tried to, I may have been a little bit selfish, but every time I'd be like, oh yes, let's do it.
でもだからこそ FF って凄まじいパワーが詰まってるんだなっていうのは改めてそのエピソードで感じますね。
But I think it's precisely because of that that like there's such an incredible power in Final Fantasy.
14も毎回詰め込むだけ詰め込んでパッチを出し拡張を作って次どうすっかって。
Yeah, in 14 as well, we always put every ounce of our energy and effort into the patches and the expansions that we make, and then when we do that, we're like, now what's next?
ありがとうございます。Thank you very much. So let's move to the next question to Sakaguchi-san. Yep, Mr. Sakaguchi, we all know you love FF14. On the other hand, do you have any behind-the-scenes stories or memories of difficulty about developing the other MMORPG in the FF series, FF11? いかがでしょうか。11の思い出。
まず MMO ロープレ自体がそこまで日本ではポピュラーじゃなかったし、何しろ英語ベースのものでしたから遊んだことがないスタッフばかりで、僕がまず最初にMMO だな、これはとにかく面白い別のゲームの形だなと思ったので、みんなに強制的にもう開発20人ぐらいですかね、もう仕事として遊びなさいと、まずそこがスタートだったんですよね。
Yeah, the MMORPG was not as popular in Japan, and I think a lot of the games that did make it to Japan were all English-based, and so there weren't very many developers that in Japan that are familiar with such a game, and so I felt that an MMORPG is a new form of entertainment, and then this is such an interesting medium. So I took about 20 members of my staff, and I had them, almost forced them to play an MMO as their work.
そしたらすごい優秀なプログラマーが一人その世界から帰ってこなくなっちゃってそれもまた引き戻すのが大変でしたね。苦労話ですね、その時ね。
And because of that, though, one of my very talented programmers got so involved and so enamored in the game that they didn't come back. So it was very difficult to bring them back and let them work. That was a challenge for sure.
そのプログラマー結局帰ってこれたんですか？
Were you able to get them back in the end?
半分ぐらい帰ってきましたね。
Maybe halfway back?
でも当時を知る人に聞くと、それこそ坂口さんがどこにもおらず打ち合わせをしたいならノーラスという世界に行った方が早いっていう噂をちょいちょい聞きました、先輩たちから。
Yeah, but I think talking to people who knew the situation back in the day, I think they were saying that Sakaguchi-san, rather than like going to a meeting, you said it's much faster to go into the world of Norus.
ね、人間って変わらないんですよ。
No, but
その頃もそうだし今もそうです。
people don't change that easily. I was like that now. I'm like that back then also.
Thank you very much. So let's move to the next question to Sakaguchi-san. Yep, the interesting one. The Final Fantasy series have seen worldwide success, but what was the moment that made you know it was a success? いかがでしょうか。
まあやっぱり1作目終わった時にすごく手応えはあって、ただすごくスクエアっていうのは小さな会社だったので、当時なかなかファミコンのカセットってあれは作るのは経営的にも大変なんですよね。なのですごく低い本数を生産するっていうことを、まあ、社長から聞いた時にですね、これはね喧嘩しました。逆にすごく手応えがあったので、もう僕はもう一生なんだったら一生これ以上のものは作れないから、とにかくもっと作ってくれっていう、はい、だからそこはまあ成功確信ではないんですけど、まあ、生きてる中でその当時、まあ、一番いいものができたと思ったのは1作目ですね。
So when I finished production of the first Final Fantasy, I really had this sense that we have this robust and significant title. And at the time, Squaresoft was a very small company, and so it did cost a lot in terms of manufacturing a Nintendo cassette. And so from a business perspective, they would want to forecast and manufacture a very limited number of units. And so I had to fight for my position with business management. I argued with them. There's no title that would be better than this. And so I wanted them to produce and manufacture more units. So yeah, it might not necessarily be a moment that I knew that it was a success, but I was very confident in what I had created in the first Final Fantasy.
まあ今だとまだ、まあ、ディスク、まあ、それでも製造費かかりますけど、当時はロムはもう全部とにかく IC チップの塊ですからね、物理的に1個作るのにすごいお金かかるんですよね。
But of course now we have discs, and of course there is a cost involved in the production. But back when we looked at the cassettes, IC chips basically it was just like a bunch like some bulk of IC chips, so it was very costly to produce.
結局その情熱にうんって言ってくださったんですか。
So after hearing that plea, did they kind of give in to your passionate plea for that?
最初に言ってた数字の倍作ってくれました。
Yes, they doubled the production quantity.
まあだから当時そこまで僕はこう経営的なことは全然わからない若さだったので、若い頃だったので、今思うとかなり無理したんだろうなっていうのは、はい、まあ今になってありがたいなと思います。はい。
Yeah, at the time I was so young and immature that I didn't know the ins and outs about the business perspective. So when I look back on it now, I realize just how much of an impossible thing that I was asking. So I was very grateful and humbled by what I was able to achieve.
めっちゃ個人的に、まあ、答えられたらいいんですけど、初回出荷ってちなみにどのぐらいだったかって覚えて、まあ、お答えできればなんですけど。
Personally, I want to ask something, but I mean, just if you don't mind answering, so if it's okay, I'm just wondering how much was the first shipment?
20万ユニットって言われて、それを40にした。
I was told 200,000 units, but I argued to get it up to 400,000.
いやでもあの時期でも初回オリジナルタイトルで RPG で20万は相当最初、それを40。
But yeah, back at that time, for an original title, I mean, 200,000 in itself was something, but then to go to 400,000.
いやこれはね、もう皆さんお若いから分かんないと思いますけど、すごいことなんですよ当時は。
I think everyone here is very young, so maybe you just don't appreciate that, but really back at that time, it's something really amazing.
社運かかってるところじゃない数字だと思うんですけど。
多分失敗したらもうそれでも社運はもちろん会社はダメだし、その借金がかなりのがこう残るような状況だったんじゃないですかね。
Yeah, not only was it taking a risk as a business, but I think we would be at a loss to where we would be in debt.
ありがとうございます。Thank you very much. では次の質問に行きたいと思います。So the next one is a completely different topic to both 坂口さんと吉田さん。お二人に質問です。Who is your favorite NPC in FF14? どちらから行きましょう。Who to answer first? 坂口さん、maybe?
難しいよね。NPC か。
はい。
PC, right? It's difficult.
やっぱり僕はモモディさんがね。
Me, I think, yeah, it would definitely have to be Momodi.
やっぱり世界に入って最初に会った子でモモディさんのおかげで入れたし、あとその後話しかけたくてもカウンターの向こう側に行けないこのもどかしさ、ますます好きになるっていうことがモモディですね。たまにビーチとかでこうイベントの時出てくるじゃないですか。もう嬉しくてしょうがないですよ。モモディがカウンターの向こう側に出たみたいな。
Yeah, when I was in my starting city, she was one of the first people I would talk to, and thanks to Momodi, I would get introduced into the realm. And she's always behind that counter at the Adventurers Guild, and I would never be able to go behind that counter with her. So when I see her at different seasonal events at the beach, I was like, oh, Momodi has come out of behind that counter, and she has come to meet with me.
いやなんかこういうとこ行けますねやっぱりこう。
Oh wow! So you go to those kind of deep places.
僕は結構拡張ごとになんていうの変わるんですよ。実は作ってるのもあってなんですけど。
Well, it's partly because I'm involved in the production, but with each expansion, my favorite NPC changes.
6.0 開発中にそのいろんな新しいキャラクター生み出してた中でエレンビルをめちゃくちゃ気に入ってしまって。
So yeah, while we were developing 6.0, we had various NPCs in the development, and I developed a very special, like Erenville developed a special place in my heart.
でそのエレンビルの物語だったりバックグラウンドだったりもっともっとキャラの掘り下げっていうのはできると思うのでもう7-0絶対出すからなって言って。
And yeah, I wanted to deep dive further into the story and the background behind Erenville, so I was thinking to myself, definitely in 7.0.
ありがとうございます。
あと通して言えばアルバートがやっぱりねすごいグッときてますね。
But of course, if I'm talking about just throughout the story, Ardbird also has a great place in my heart.
Thank you very much. So let's move to the next question to Sakaguchi-san. Very interesting one. Similar to how Mr. Yasumi Matsuno worked on Save the Queen, Blaze of the Gunhilder, do you have any desire to create content and scenario for FF14 as a guest creator?
これはもうね全くないですね。僕は楽しみたいので授業が多分ちょっとでも仕事にしちゃうと内部構造も分かるし何しろ作ってる最中楽しくないので何でしょう別に本当、前向きな気持ちで、絶対嫌ですっていうぐらい。
Absolutely not. If I make this as part of my work, I will know what's going on behind the scenes, so I wouldn't be able to enjoy the content myself while I'm making it. So, no offense, but no.
吉田さんいかがですか？招待できました。
いや今日一の拍手じゃないですか。
But whoa, I mean, look at the enthusiasm in that applause.
いやもちろんご一緒できればねたくさんまた新しいアイデアもいただけるとは思うんですけどご本人がねいややりたくないよ遊ぶ方がいいもんって言われると無理強いもちょっと難しいのでなんだろうシーズナルイベントぐらいからちょっとねいつかちょっとお話できたらいいなとはなんとなく独り言ですけどはい。
So yeah, I mean, of course, it'd be great to work together on some sort of content, but of course, when you put it that way, I know I cannot exactly force you, but maybe I'm thinking to myself, let's just kind of ease you in there. Maybe first on some seasonal content.
Oh, of course, no.
All right.
Next.
Yeah, let's move to the next question. The next one is both to Sakaguchi-san and Yoshida-san. Do you know about the toy box minigames in FF14? I personally love the recent Kupo Kupo adventure Do you have any favorite simple games like that? いかがでしょうか。
ちょっとねクポはまだ遊べてないんですけど、でも昔の FF にもねなんかチョコでこう地面を掘ってみたいなのがあったりとか、なんかなんていうのかな、すごくこうミニマイズされたアイデアで、もともとゲームってそういうもんだし、そこでこうハマっていくものってゲームの原点だし、すごくいいですよね。だからこういうふうに14内にやっぱり入っていくっていうのもなんか楽しいし、すごく好きです、ミニゲームは。
Unfortunately, I have not had a chance to play Kupo Kupo Adventure, but yeah, there's been various mini games throughout the series. I know there was a mini game where you would go treasure hunting with a chocobo and dig the ground, but these mini games have these ideas kind of condensed into this minimized ideas, and it allows for people to dive into some of these really interesting ideas and for them to get really involved and enamored through that. And it's really cool that 14 incorporates that as well. So yeah, I really love any kind of mini game that's in there.
僕もやっぱり、日本でいうゲームセンターアーケードでたくさんゲームもやっぱり遊んできた世代なので、本当は14の中のゴールドソーサーにはありとあらゆるこうクラシックでシンプルなビデオゲームが並んでていつでも遊べるみたいなのが、正直言うと結構夢だったりはします。とりあえず14入ればいろいろ遊べるじゃんみたいな。
Yeah, I think when I grew up playing a lot of games in the arcades in Japan, and as a player, you have Gold Saucer, and in there you have like various simple games that you can play anytime. So I think that kind of creating that kind of layout is something that's great, and that's what I thought would be great to do.
だから本当はオセロができるよとか、チェスもあるよ、将棋もあるよ、ね、トランプのカードゲームもあるので、もうとにかく全部一回ログインしたらいろんなもので遊んでって言いたいんですけど、法律上いろいろダメだって言われるゲームもあったりするんで、なんかこの辺がね毎回すごい悩むんですよ。
Of course, I would like to put more like available in the game. So, for example, maybe chess or card games and such. But unfortunately, there's always kind of some legal problems. Legally, it's tricky to incorporate some of those games. So that's always something that's kind of cause concern.
Thank you very much. So let's move to the next question to Sakaguchi-san. Yep, the long one. The Final Fantasy has always had various themes: the power of friendship, fun families, nature versus science, magic versus machine, freedom versus conformity, the balance of light and dark, just to name a few. Of the many themes echoed in the series, which is your favorite and why? 真面目なやつが来ました。
真面目なやつですね。
A very serious question.
バランスってやっぱり面白くて、世の中って全てこうバランスで成り立っていて、でバランスが壊れた時に人の感情も同じようにこう揺れるというか、感情の揺れによってまたこうバランスがさらに他のところで壊れていくみたいな、なんていうのかな、ドラマを作る上でやっぱりバランスっていうのが設定としてすごく大事だとは思っています。はい。
Yeah, this notion of balance is definitely very interesting. I think everything in this universe or this world is maintaining a sort of balance in some aspect, and whenever that balance is sort of offset or disturbed in some way, then emotions also kind of start getting a little disturbed, and then from there's like a chain reaction of another part of a balance that kind of falls apart as well. So it's very key in building this sort of drama and creating different lore and settings. So I think it is a very important aspect.
だから坂口さんにとっては今こうバーサスで書かれてるやつのどれが好みかとかじゃなくて、全てこれバランスのお話ってことですよね。バランスのテーマっていうことですよね、きっと。
そうですね、そういうことですよね。
So I think for you, Sakaguchi-san, there's various kind of themes listed here which used verses, but it's not much a question of your preference, but it's basically you see it as striking that balance. Is that right?
Yeah, everything is about balance.
あともう一つあるのはなんか素数の話とかって例えば大好きで、一見こうランダムに見えるけど実はなんか自然界を全て牛耳る規則性を含んでるんじゃないかって言って、でも証明しようとすると数学者がもうちょっとおかしくなっちゃうっていうような、なんていうか一見、科学というかこう数学でしかないのに、それがこう宇宙にまで影響してるとか、そういう、これはまたちょっとバランスとは違うんですけど、なんですか二重性っていうんですかね、それも好きですね。
I also like where there's a sort of rhythm or like a stuff that happens that seem very random, but they're actually built upon some kind of a formula or like some kind of track that they're on. And if you try to explain it away, it kind of makes it very complicated. But then when you boil down to it, there is some sort of science behind it. There's some kind of math behind it, but it also affects the general universe. I like that sort of duality of it seems very simple, but then it's also very complicated at the same time.
あれですよね、なぜ定期的にこの数字が自然界に出てくるのかとか、突き詰め始めるとなんでこんな都合のいい物理法則で成り立ってるんだろうとか、そういうところがお好きってことですよね。
なんか大好きですね、なんかね。
Yeah, so I think, for example, there's some numbers which like kind of regularly appear naturally in the natural world, and also kind of why this kind of physical formula is applied. Is it that kind of thing?
僕も大好きな話題なので、ちょっと次回はそれを
飲みながら。
昨日もだいぶ飲みましたけど。
I also tend to like these kinds of technical subjects, so I think maybe the next time let's go for a drink, and when we're drinking we can talk more on this topic.
素数でこう一気飲みの量が増えていくという。
Oh, let's do a drinking game with prime numbers.
そこやっぱり世代ですね。
That's really kind of a thing of a generation, right? Generation thing.
Okay, thank you very much. And time flies. The next one will be the final question. そろそろいい時間になってしまいましたので、次が最後の質問です。The last question is very specific question to 坂口さん。最後は坂口さんにお伺いしたい質問です。Mr. 坂口, as a founder of the series, what do you believe makes a game a Final Fantasy game? いかがでしょうか。
16でもすごく思ったんですけど、やっぱりこう、特に作り手としての意識としてのファイナルファンタジーですけど、なんていうかこうチャレンジする、こう冒険してシステムをこう新しくしていくっていうような、そこのその勇気っていうか、なかなか実は大変だし、もう続いてる作品なのである程度同じでいいじゃないかっていう発想もできやすいんですけど、そうじゃなくて毎回そうですね、その冒険心を持つ勇気っていうか、でそれを持って進めば多分もともとあるファイナルファンタジーの引力みたいなものは働いているので、そのファイナルファンタジーのらしさみたいなのは実はそこでもう構築されちゃってて、そうじゃない本当の意味のファイナルファンタジーっていうのかな、になるんじゃないかなと。16はもう本当にそういう意味じゃすごくチャレンジしてたし、ファイナルファンタジーらしさっていうのをすごく感じました。
So I felt this when I saw Final Fantasy 16 also, and this comes from a perspective of someone who creates these different works. But I think with Final Fantasy, you always want to take a challenge and to take an adventure into building a new system for the new installment. That courage to be able to take that risk. Of course, it's a very hard job and it's a very large undertaking, but with a series that has continued for this long, sometimes people might think, oh, well, why don't you just make more of the same thing? I think that shouldn't be the case in Final Fantasy. Every time we should have that courage to have the sense of adventure, to take on new challenges. And then that's when that sort of gravity that pulls people into a Final Fantasy title will kind of activate. And that kind of produces a title that feels very much like a Final Fantasy. And truly, with Final Fantasy 16, I think you did take on a lot of challenges. And I do feel that it feels very much like a Final Fantasy game. So yeah, I think that's how I feel.
いやもう16にも触れていただいてありがとうございます。でもまあ本当に坂口さんが挑戦が大事なんだってこう言ってくださってるのはみんなまあ今16は DLC も作ってるんで、まあ、14チームももちろんですけど、まあ、僕も含め改めてこうグッとくるものがあるのであんまり日和らずに新しいゲーム体験というのをね14もこの先まだまだ続けていくので頑張っていこうと思います。
So yeah, Sakaguchi-san, thank you so much for playing 16 as well. So it was exactly because you said that taking on a challenge is important that we are keeping that in mind as well throughout our development. So right now the team on 16 is making DLC, but of course we are always making content in 14 as well. So we are going to continue to keep that challenge, that focus on challenge in mind and try to deliver the best content we can.
何か僕から最後に1個なんですけど、まあ、多分見てる方とかでも若い世代の人で俺が FF 作りたいみたいな人たちもいると思うんですよ。今まさにゲーム業界を目指してますとか、そんな人たちに何か一言ありますか？これだけはもう大事にしとけみたいな。
So, if I may, I'd like to ask one question from myself. I think we've got a lot of viewers here who are probably quite young themselves, and they might be thinking, oh, I want to make a Final Fantasy myself. So for anyone who has like an aspiration to join the industry, what would you say?
真面目に答えていいん
もう
です
ぜひ、いやまあどちらでも大丈夫ですけ
You
ど。
want a serious answer, yes?
なんていうのかな、建物ってこうデザインとかにどうしても目が行きがちだし、やっぱりそれで美しいビルディングとかなるじゃないですか。でもあれってやっぱり元々のこう構造とかその強度の計算とかそういったものがあって初めて美しさになるので、ゲームを目指す人はやっぱりものすごく真面目な話になっちゃうけど、プログラミングをねある程度もうプログラマーになるぐらいの気持ちで突っ込んで勉強してからデザインでも何でも行った方が僕は最終的にすごくいいかなと思いますけど、はい。
So whenever you look at a building or a structure, people tend to look at the outer appearance, like the design, and look at it and say, oh, what a beautiful building. But then you have to think about how that building came to be, like how it is designed, what the structure is, what kind of calculations went into making sure that it is a stable and sound building structure. And then that all comes together to produce this beautiful structure. And so, and I'm sorry, this is really serious, but for anybody that is aspiring to work on games, I would recommend studying programming and knowing the foundations of what goes into a game. Maybe even study it so much so that you yourself can do some programming as well, and then look into the different aspects like design and things like that.
まあゲームが今複雑回帰になってこうどんどん専門家性に特化していってしまってるからこそプログラムまず覚えておこうよみたいなのはめちゃくちゃ真理だと思うのでありがとうございます。
So yeah, I think especially considering game development these days, it's kind of branching out into very specialist sections. But I think it's precisely because of that it is important to have a bit of a programming background. So I think that kind of mentality is important. So thanks so much for sharing.
真面目すぎてすみません。
いやいやもうグッときました。
I'm sorry, it's like a very, very straightforward and serious answer.
Oh no worries, not at all. It was great.
Yeah, thank you very much, 坂口さん、吉田さん、お二人ともどうもありがとうございました。
ありがとうございます。
And this is actually a wrap of today's Naoki's Room. Did you like it? 直樹の部屋は本日でこれで終了となりますので、最後終了する前にお二人から一言ずついただきたいと思いますので、前の方にお願いします。So before closing, I want to have the final words from 坂口さんと吉田さん。坂口さんお願いします。
もう14のファンフェスタ僕来たかったんですずっと。で今日はもう初めて初体験で、もうなんていうか幸せでいっぱいなので本当にありがとうございます。皆さんにもありがとう。もうそれを最後に、はい。
I've always wanted to attend a Final Fantasy XIV fan festival, and so being here for the first time, I'm so happy, and I want to thank everybody here for coming as well.
でもですよ、明日もファンフェスはあり、なんと明日はどうやらこのステージで坂口さんと僕同じパーティーで
ですね
14をプレイするという企画がございますので。
But you know what? At this very fan fest tomorrow, you and me, Sakaguchi-san, will be forming a party and we'll be playing 14 together.
タンク強攻撃、僕タンクなんで、タンク強攻撃が来たらヨシピーに当てます。
Oh yes, I'll be going in as a tank, so when I see a tank buster coming, I'm going to kind of shirk it off to
大丈夫です。
Yoshida.
大丈夫です。エーテリアルステップで別の人になすりつけに行きます。
Oh, no need to worry there. I'll use ethereal manipulation and just head over to another person.
これは明日に取っときましょうね。Okay, save it to the tomorrow. So thank you very much for watching until the very end of the program. And this is actually the last program of the streaming today. So for those of you watching through the web stream, let's see you tomorrow again. 以上で直樹の部屋終了とさせていただきたいと思います。そしてこれが本日のストリーミングの最終プログラムとなりますので、ウェブでご覧いただいている方はまたお会いしましょう。それでは以上で失礼したいと思います。So this is the actual wrap of this program. Thank you very much.
配信見てる皆さん、See you tomorrow.
For all of us joining on the stream, see you tomorrow.